Thank you. It's really a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much. I've got to collect myself for a second. So I'm Marylisa, and I'm an alcoholic. And as I said, it's always a pleasure to speak, and to tell your story. And it's a little intimidating to be the only speaker in an hour-long meeting, but I'll stretch it out. So if you are sitting there and thinking to yourself, if Dad wasn't an alcoholic, and hit me so much, or if Mom wasn't a drug addict, if I hadn't lived in that crummy apartment, if I had more support at home, I wouldn't have been a drunk. I can tell you that I grew up in a warm, loving family. My father loved my mother loved my father. You could just rename me Sally Suburbia, because I grew up in one of those developments. They popped up like mushrooms after the rain, after World War II. The G.I. Joes came home and they married their sweethearts, and then they moved into these brand new houses, and the baby boomers began. And it's interesting because here in Delaware, I look around and the baby boomers are having more of those developments popping up, but we're calling them 55-plus communities now. And that's where I grew up. I grew up in one of those houses. It was a little brick house with, 3 bedrooms and 3 kids and 2 parents and a basement, and, all of those things that a lot of people dreamed about. And somehow, I still became a fall down, vomiting, throw up, wet my pants, pass out drunk. It doesn't matter if you've got the disease, you got the disease. That's really what it comes down to. But that family was wonderful. It really was. My dad was terrific. We took vacations like camping trips across country. It was that kind of a family. My dad was Irish, my mom was Italian. I had 1 brother and 1 sister, but a ginormous extended family. I think I was 22 before I realized that there are families who can sit around one table and have a meal. We always had buffet style, and people were everywhere. I would go to my Italian grandmother's every Sunday, and there was usually about, 15 or 20 people there at least, laughing and talking. And in the middle of all of that, I felt entirely alone all the time. I was sitting over there in a corner reading a book, and my aunts we were all talking in Italian, and they would say to my mother, "What is she doing? She's over there reading." I have a Jewish accent, but if they were talking in Italian, what is she doing? She's over there reading a book. Why is she reading a book? Why isn't she over here? My mother, that's how she is. And that's how I was, because I didn't know. I didn't know how to not be like that. I desperately wanted to not be like that, but I didn't know how. I just didn't know how. It took me a long time. I always thought there was a book that would tell me how, and it took me until I came to Alcoholics Anonymous to realize that there actually is a book that would tell me how, but that's later in my story. I was a good kid. I went to school every day. I didn't cut school. I got good grades. I didn't really get into much trouble. I was always in healthcare of some kind. And my very first job, I was a candy striper for 2 or 3 years, because I started at 13 and I was in the program where you actually took care of patients. I don't think that would happen today, but that's what happened back then. And my first job was at a nursing home, and it was one of the early multiple levels. So there was a big dining room and what now we would call assisted living, and then there was independent living, and then there was a nursing home floor. And I was a tray girl. I was never a waitress. I could never do that. That is such an amazing job. I would never be able to do that. I couldn't even cut it in a nursing home dining room. I gave General Renfro had his own table, and I gave them the wrong food, and became a tray girl the next week. It worked out fine. But it was my first job. It was a kitchen, and it was fun. It was most kids, most of us. I think the oldest person was the chef. He was 21, 22, and he had a party. I was about 15. He had a party. He had his own apartment. He was a grown-up. Definitely, he was a grown-up. He had his own apartment. He had us all over for this party and some of his other friends. And I went to the party. I drove, I just got my license. I drove over. It was an apartment. It was one of these high-rise apartments up in the elevator. I walked in, and somebody handed me what I thought was a beer, but it was a Boilermaker. And I drank it right down. And, it tasted terrible. But beer tasted terrible. It all tasted terrible to me. I'd had sips of beer and stuff, so I slammed it down. And it was magical. It hit my brain, and all of a sudden, it was like a key slid into a lock, and it turned, and the door opened, and I walked through it, and I was in the promised land. I was in the promised land. I could talk to anybody. I was so funny. All the guys loved me. The girls hated me. They were so jealous. I was the belle of the ball. It was fabulous. I was fabulous. Let's just be honest. I was fabulous. And I chased that feeling for another 20 years. 20 years. Until I really found out what a lie it was. It was a lie. Total lie. I drove home that night. I drove drunk for the first time. I was seeing double. I invented closing one eye and driving. If you used that, you're welcome. I got home that night. The room was spinning. Planted my foot on the floor. Again, you're welcome. Big help. And I loved it. I loved it. And from that moment, from that day, the whole of my story can be told in 4 words. It always got worse. From that time on, it would seem to get better. I would have a good time, but it always got worse. Instead of one Boilermaker, it took a couple of beers. It took a couple of wines. It took more alcohol. I never quite got there. I never quite got back to that magic. It kept getting worse. I got through high school. I graduated. I went to college. I wanted to be a nurse. I always wanted to be a nurse. And so I got into nursing school. I met one of the nurses at the hospital. I worked in a hospital, and one of the nurses connected me with a guy that was going to the same school. Turns out he was a drug dealer. Who knew? But I met him my first day of school, and he introduced me to one of his friends, and the party began, basically. And I partied my way through school, and it kept getting worse. It always got worse. I started to add what I've now heard called side dishes, which I like that. I added a lot of side dishes. But alcohol was always the background music. Everything was in service to alcohol. I had we lived in New Jersey. I had a sponsor in New Jersey. She said, I did Quaaludes and drank, I have no stories. And I could say that, but the truth is, I really didn't do the drugs were a way. I didn't like Quaaludes because I passed out. And I liked doing things that would keep me awake so I could drink more. It was always about the alcohol, always about the alcohol. And it kept getting worse. I somehow managed to graduate. I do remember one time sitting in my apartment, which was paid for by the guy that I met that first day, the nurse had hooked me up with. And I was sitting there, and I watched the clock go by as my midterm for one of my nursing classes rolled through. And didn't go. And so I went to the professor the next day and I said, I couldn't make it. Talk about arrogance, right? I couldn't make it. Can I take a makeup? He looked at me and goes, well, why couldn't you make it? And I said, well, I just couldn't make it. And I think he was shocked. He was just like, well, I know he was shocked. I know I would be shocked. And he's, I'll let you know. So the next day I went to class and he said, I'm going to give the exam again. And anyone who didn't take it may take it. And anyone who would like to take it again because they think they can get a better grade can take it again. This guy saved my freaking career, basically. I don't even know who he is, you know. But those kinds of things kept happening for me. I had no idea that there was a higher power that was already interested in me. I really didn't. I had no idea. I thought it was because I was so smart. I wasn't really very smart. And it kept getting worse. I graduated from college. I married that guy that I had met the first day, not the drug dealer, the guy that the drug dealer had introduced me to. We had basically gone through college, drinking and getting high and drinking. What could possibly go wrong with that marriage? How could anything but perfection come from that? And it kept getting worse. Kept getting worse. We had our first child after a few years, Justin, and I stopped drinking and doing any drugs at all when I was pregnant with Justin. And then for 3.5 years later, I got pregnant with Sam. I didn't stop drinking with Sam. I didn't stop doing side dishes. And at one point, I called my doctor, and I told her how much I had had the night before. And I thought she was going to say, oh, Marylisa, you worry too much. But she said, you better come in and get a couple of tests. And I realized that was the first time I realized what I was doing to this child that I was carrying, what I was doing to this baby. And luckily, he was okay. He did have some special learning needs, ADHD, but you know, he grew up, he's okay. And it kept getting worse. Kept getting worse. When he was a baby, I remember passing out on the sofa with him screaming, crying next to me. And my husband came down and he said, what are you doing? You know, and I thought, oh, you know, because I didn't even know he was crying. I was passed out so profoundly, so deeply. So the marriage wasn't a pony ride in the park either. Now, to be fair, I was not a pony ride in the park to be married to, but we were spectacularly ill-suited to one another, shall I say. And it didn't help that I was passing out and throwing up, you know. And I didn't used to talk about that because it's gross, you know. Telling you that I wet my pants is gross, basically. But the truth is, we come in here, and especially women, you know, we clean up really well. We do. We clean up really well. And we hold our heads high, and because we're not drinking anymore. And I look around this room, and I look at all you women, and I think, they never drank like I did. Especially when I first came around. They never drank like I did. You know, they never, I look at Lisa, my gosh, she never threw up. Oh my gosh, extra glass of wine at dinner, I must run off to AA. You know? I mean, that's what I thought. So I tell people, I tell you that. Not because I'm proud of it, because I'm not proud of it. That's why I tell you. Because I have to remember who I was and who I could be tomorrow if I don't stay close to this program and do what I'm told and what I know to do. So, there's a whole, I checked all the boxes. I wrecked a car. I passed out when I should have been wide awake. I embarrassed my husband. I embarrassed my children. I mean, I checked all the boxes. And I'd gotten, we were very sophisticated. You know, my husband at the time's parents were from Europe, and they were very much into, you know, fancy wine and French cheese, and had to have the right cheese with the right wine, and, you know, it was the 70s, so there was a lot of fondue. And trust me when I tell you, you did not want to be there when I had a fondue pot full of hot oil that I was carrying to the kitchen after the 14th glass of wine. Okay? But that's how it was. That was our life. And it kept getting worse, you know? It just kept getting worse. So I want to go to my last drink. It had gotten to a point where I had ranked my drunks. It was never going to be a time that I didn't drink. I drank incredibly cheap wine, like we're talking, it's called Catani White, came in a gallon jug. I think it was like $4. I mean, it was incredibly cheap. But I put it into a crystal decanter, because, you know, I'm sophisticated, right? So I poured the gallon of wine into the decanter, and I put it in because white wine has to be chilled. Now, to be clear, I drank white wine, although red wine was more sophisticated, but red wine stains very badly. And I was definitely going to be spilling some, and most of it was going to be spilled on me. So, yeah, just like this, right? Now I know I'm drinking white wine because it doesn't stain. I can be a slob, and you'll never know. So I would drink white wine cheap white wine with my crystal decanter and my Waterford crystal, and I was sophisticated. I just was really sophisticated, and I really thought that I was doing it because I wanted to, not because I had to. So I remember opening the refrigerator. It's like I'm standing there in front of it in the refrigerator, and I'm looking at the wine, and I'm thinking, you know, I can choose whether or not to drink, and I choose to drink. Now, it never occurred to me that I always chose to drink, but I chose to drink. So, and it kept getting worse, you know. So my last drink, I had started ranking my drunks. I was always going to drink. If I remembered going to sleep, if I went to sleep instead of passing out, and I remembered going to bed, and I considered that as having had a few. I was drunk if I didn't remember going to bed, but I woke up and everything was dry and everything was clean and people were talking to me. I'd gotten drunk. I'd gotten really drunk if I didn't remember going to bed. If I didn't remember going to bed and woke up in a mess, I'd really gotten drunk. And I was blitzed if I woke up on the living room floor, never having made it to bed. And by my measure, I was blitzed at least once or twice a week and drunk a lot. So it was New Year's Eve, and my husband had people from work coming to for the evening, you know, for New Year's Eve. And so I really had to be careful because I couldn't screw him up. I really couldn't. It was, you know. And so I was doing all the stuff we do, right? I'm going to start with spritzers because, you know, then it's not that I drink too much, it's that I drink too fast. So I'll start with a spritzer and make sure that I take my time, you know, so I'll drink slower. And I time them, you know. I time the drinks, how many I could have for each hour when I could have them. And I'll be very careful. I'm not gonna, you know, I gotta be very careful that I don't spill it. So I'm gonna not drink until I sit down, and I'll hold the glass really carefully. I mean, I had the whole thing planned out. And by my measure, I wasn't really drunk that night. I did really super well. super well. I want it noted. I did super well. And went to bed, woke up the next morning, got up with the kids, although it was not my turn. It was not my turn to get up with the kids, but I did it because I'm a good mother. I want that noted. My husband slept. He slept in. He had a fever. So I got up with them. I fed them breakfast, like put some cereal in a bowl and put it down where they could eat it, like you do with puppies. And started watching a movie. And about 9:30, 10 o'clock, thought I'd have a little glass of wine. New Year's Day, Happy New Year's. Had another glass of wine. Somewhere along in there, in the middle of the morning, I thought what I needed to do was put together that IKEA dresser that we had in the other room. Now, I want to tell you, I'm sober quite some time now, and I have never thought it was a good idea to put together an IKEA anything, ever since then. But I thought this IKEA dresser was gonna do it. So I took it all apart, and I had all this stuff all over the place, and my 3.5-year-old son came in, Sam, and wanted to help. He was 3.5, he wanted to help. And by this time, I was halfway through that. Now Katani came in a box. Whoa, what a pleasure that was. I had no chance of, had a spout and everything. It was really very cool. So I was halfway through the box, and I told him, no, Mommy doesn't need help. Mommy's very busy. Go away. Go do something else. Well, he's 3.5. He wants to help. And so go away. Mommy's very busy. And he picked up a piece of the drawer, and he broke off one of those plastic tabs that it snaps together with. And I always like to picture Sam right in front of me when I tell this part of my story, because I never want to forget that. I went crazy on him. I went crazy screaming at this little kid, this little 3.5-year-old kid. He just wanted to help me, screaming at him. And if you've had a 3.5-year-old or been around a 3.5-year-old, everything's on their face. And first it's shock, and then it's fear, and then it's hurt, and then it's back to fear, and then it's back to hurt, and then it's tears. And I never want to forget that. And that was when this spiritual higher power that had always protected me, that had gotten me, home that night, after that first drink, that had gotten me to be able to take that test so that I could get into the profession that was what I was always supposed to do. The power that had kept me, that had saved Sam when I was exposing him to all that stuff when he was inside of me. That higher power spoke to me and said, this is how it starts. And I knew what they were talking about, because everybody knows those mothers, the ones where the other mothers say, oh no, you don't have to drive carpool. Don't worry, we got you on that. Or they say, oh, you know what? I know Sam wanted my son to come over, but why don't you have Sam come to my house? We have all these new toys. Or, no, Mommy, I don't have a big part in the play. You don't have to come. It's a waste of time. Or, no, Marylisa, we don't need any more chaperones for the dance. All those things that moms are told when they're one of those moms, because the other mothers want to protect their children from you, and they want to protect your child from you as best they can. And for me, my higher power told me it was going to start that day. And it was exactly like the first drink. I realized that, and a door opened. And this time I walked through, and I was in the promised land. And I called this woman who had forced her number on me in the fall. I'd gone to this AA meeting because I had done something really egregious. My husband called me to pick him up because his car died. It was about 4 miles away, and I passed out with the phone on my chest, so he couldn't call me back and wake me up, and he had to walk home. It was really bad. And so I'd gone to this meeting to prove to him I wasn't an alcoholic and I would do whatever it took, right? And this woman was sitting there and across from me. It was like this, except we had seats on both sides. I remember they read how it worked, and I thought, well, my ears perked up. Let's see, I'm looking for a to-do list here, right? What are you talking about? So this woman was across from me, and I thought she was a social worker who was there looking for new clients, basically. I could not imagine this woman was a drunk. She had this. First, I always talk about Barbara's coat. She had the most fabulous fur coat I have ever seen. It was like all white fur. It was beautiful. Her hair was perfect. Her makeup was perfect. Her clothes were perfect. She smiled. I mean, I couldn't imagine she was a drunk. And so after the meeting, I kept kind of looking at her. And after the meeting, she stopped me, and she said, "Are you new?" And I thought, well, now she's going to be asking me about my insurance in a minute. And I said, well, I'm just here, just thought I'd find out what was going on. She goes, oh, okay. She said, well, do you want a meeting? In New Jersey, they have like a 20-page meeting book, like, do you want a meeting book? No, I'm not going to need a meeting book. Thank you so much. And she said, well, why don't I give you my number? And I said, okay. And so I took out a grocery receipt, and a pen, because I'm from Virginia, I'm a Catholic girl, and I'm polite. So I take out that. Sure, give me your number. No, you put it in your address book. Don't you? You must have an address book. The woman is peering into my purse, okay? I had my purse open because I was taking out the receipt. She's like, don't you have a... Now, for those of you who are younger, we used to carry around books, and you would put people's names and addresses in the book, okay? Not the phone. It was a book. And so she's looking in my purse for my book. I said, here it is. She goes, great. She goes, put my number on the last page, and then you can put all your AA numbers on the last page of your address book. And you'll have all your AA numbers. You don't have to remember specifically who you're looking for. You'll have all your AA numbers on one page, like I was ever going to have another AA number. Sure. Take Barbara's number. If she hadn't been so obnoxious, so wonderful, such a miracle, I don't know if I'd be here. Because that day, when I got through that door, I picked up my address book the next morning, and I called Barbara, and I said, I can't do it anymore. I can't do it anymore. I don't know if you remember me. Oh, I remember you. So I can't do it anymore. And this was January 2nd. And she said, okay, I'll take you to a meeting today. I'll pick you up and take you to a meeting, 1 o'clock. Be ready at 12:15. And I felt like a fool. Because, let's be real, we're talking January 2nd. Every year, I'm going to lose 20 pounds. I'm going to go to the gym at least 4 times a week. I never said I'm going to quit drinking. I'm going to cut down on my drinking. I'm going to, a whole list of stuff. I'm going to write the book. That's like, and I felt like an idiot. Here we go again. That was what I thought. Here we go again. And she said exactly the right thing to me. She said, it's a new year and you can have a new life. And I did. That's exactly what I got. I went to the meeting that day, and it was a little group. It was in like a 2-part. There was 2 meetings. There was one on a small group, and then on the other side of one of those collapsible walls that they have, there was another meeting on the other side. And in the meeting I was in, let's face it, I was like less than 24 hours from my last drunk. Everybody was like talking to me. I heard a lot about first step stuff. I heard about Barbara. Oh my gosh. I had no idea. She drank like I did. Who knew? But anyway, so everybody's very serious, and I'm getting really, it's all very serious. And on the other side of the collapsible wall, I heard laughter. People were laughing, and I thought, oh, she's got me in the wrong meeting. Those are the people who are still drinking on the weekends. I should be there. These people don't drink at all. This is the advanced group. I had no idea. I had no idea that there was so much laughter in being sober, so much joy in being sober. And that was the beginning. And I went to a meeting the next day. I didn't drink the first day. And I went to a meeting the next day, and I didn't drink that day. And then I went to a meeting the next day, and I didn't drink that day. And then at the end of the week, she said, there's a meeting on Sunday night, and it's a speaker meeting. And that's where all the people who go to all these other meetings, we all go to that meeting. That's our home group. And so I went to that. And I started hearing other people's stories. All these stories that were just like me, just like me. And so from that day, the story changed, and it's really pretty much in 4 words. It always got better, and the better it gets, the better it gets. That's the marriage that I was in. When I didn't look so sick, he didn't look so healthy. And as it turns out, he really did not he wanted very much for me not to be an alcoholic, but he wanted very much for me to drink as well. And I couldn't do that. I just couldn't do that. So we split up about 3 years later. And it turns out we were very ill-suited to one another. And the reason I think that our higher power put us together was to have 2 amazing kids. And I did. I had this whole new life. And you know what? Those 2 amazing little boys had a whole different life. A whole different life than they would have had. Because of you. Because of Alcoholics Anonymous. Alcoholics Anonymous raised my kids and did a fabulous job. I mean, when I didn't know what to do, I would call my sponsor, Barbara, and she would say, well, do this. I remember, I got to backtrack. It was like the marriage was falling apart, right? And I'd been whining and complaining about Ron for like 6 or 8 months. And wait for a year. Everything is going to change. You're going to be a whole different person. So then it was about 1.5 years, and he said, he was pissed off. I'm going to divorce you. And I'm thinking, oh, why wait? And so I go over to Barbara's, and I'm crying, and, oh, we had this terrible fight, and he said he's going to divorce me. And she's blow drying her hair, right? And so she turns off the blow dryer, and she turns to me, and she goes, well, that's going to make all your decisions a lot easier, isn't it? Like, hello? But that's the honesty that we give one another. That's the truth. That was the truth. It did make my decisions a lot easier. And it was the right thing to do. And it's funny, I had dinner with my kids last December. It was my birthday, and so just the 3 of us, the 3 musketeers, went out for dinner together. And I make an amends to my kids periodically because, it was no pony ride in the park growing, living with a single mother in new sobriety, who is terrified and has no idea how to live life, is not fun for a 7-year-old and a 5-year-old, or I guess Justin was 8 by then, and a 5-year-old. It was not fun. But so I make an amends to them, because as they get older and their kids get older, they see things differently. They see the kinds of things that I did wrong, and they see the kinds of things I did right. So we went out to dinner, and I said, guys, I just want you to know that I know that I wasn't like the best mom in the world for quite a few years there. But I know I got better as I got older, but I wasn't a great mom for a long time. And they said to me, Mom, the best things in our childhood were things that you did for us. What a great thing that you did for my kids, because all of that is from Alcoholics Anonymous. All of it. All of it. So the better it gets, the better it gets. That's really, that's the rest of my story. it was, Sam is 38 now. He's my 3.5-year-old. And he is a special ed teacher. And he's amazing. He's changed all kinds of lives. He's really, and he's a writer. He's written a book that he self-published. It's a children's book. And, he's great. They live out in Arizona. He's married to, the perfect woman. She's awesome. He knows it, and they have 2 little boys, and they're raising their kids out, and, their idea of a fun time is to go for a 2-mile hike with 2 little kids. Okay. But they love it, And Justin is 42, and God has a sense of humor. Justin worked on Capitol Hill for a while. He worked on Capitol Hill for 4 or 5 years. And then he got a job with Heineken. And so Marty, who I met in the program, and Justin had a credit card to get free beer. And Marty's like, what are you talking about? And so we went to, I remember when Justin had graduated from college and Sam graduated from high school. And I didn't have any money. I really didn't, But I had credit cards and I knew how to use them. And I had some points for mileage, from the credit card. And so I got us tickets, and I used the credit card, and I got us we went for a cruise in the Inner Passage in Alaska, because we had never done a family vacation. I had spent about 5 years working per diem. I was a visiting nurse back then, and I worked per diem, and I would work 7 days a week. And not all day on Saturday and all day on Sunday, but like 2 or 3 visits Saturday, 2 or 3 visits Sunday, save my money. And then I would take off from June until August, and the boys and I would go up to Maine. And I was a camp nurse, and they got free sleepaway camp. It was great. And years later, Justin said, I was talking to a friend from high school, and he was telling me about when they got arrested in the park, and I wasn't there. And then I realized I was at camp. Well, duh. Why do you think I did it? But we had never taken a family vacation. So we went to Alaska. It was a great cruise. It was a lot of fun, and the boys had a great time. They always say go to an AA meeting. When you're on a ship, you'll see people from all over the world, all kinds of people from all over the world. And so, sure enough, I go. It's me and one guy, and a woman from Al-Anon who only came the first day. I guess nobody drank with her. But so it's me and Eric from Honduras. So he's a nice guy, right? So he tells me his story. First day, second day, I tell him my story. Then we read the big book, and then we're like 4 days into a 10-day cruise, and we're just talking about our kids and our families and all of that. And he's there with his kids. He's a single father, and he brought his kids on vacation with him. It was a family vacation for them. He's got a daughter and a son. And the kids were right around the same age, so we play date, right? Get the kids together. So Sam and his younger son, Roy, got along. They were, that was good. And Justin and Erica really hit it off, and she's now my daughter-in-law. And they just, they're just best play date ever. Best gift of the program. I remember Sam sent a text, it was June 11th, and he said, this is the anniversary of AA, and it changed our lives, so let's all say thank you. And Justin goes, you kidding? AA gave me my wife. But that's really, that's how it is. I remember being in the car with the kids, and I had, I used to listen to a lot of those speaker tapes. So I had Bill Wilson's tape, actually it was the recording that he made the day that Dr. Bob died. He was supposed to speak, and he wasn't going to. And then someone said, this is what Dr. Bob would want you to do. If you ever get a chance, it's very powerful. And so I had that playing, right? And Justin and Sam get in the car because I was picking them up from somewhere, because that's all you ever do when you have kids that age. And Justin gets in the car. He goes, "What's this?" And I said, "This is this is Bill Wilson." "Well, turn this off. Put on some music." "This guy changed your life." This guy changed your life. And he did. He did, because he gave the start. He didn't give the program, but he gave the start to the program. He gave that first phone call. You know, just like that call I made to Barbara. He made that first phone call. And look at where we are. Look at us. I would never know any of you folks. I would never know, unless you went to a bar. I might know you then. I remember Barbara once, I said, "God, people in AA are so nice. It's like the people that, you know, like you meet them in the bar or something like that. They're so friendly like that." And she goes, "Marylisa, they are the exact people that you met in the bar. They just don't drink anymore." It really is. It's just been a miracle. You know, Marty and I met through AA, and because we have like a spiritual basis to our lives, it's a whole different kind of relationship. And, you know, and because we have sponsors, it's a different kind of relationship. And it's, you know, it makes everything, it gives us a basis, you know. So we were at the doctor's office, because we're at that age where that's where we go. And there was a woman there, and he was joking about something. Believe it or not, Marty jokes a lot. And this woman was sitting in the waiting room, and I sat down, and she goes, "You guys really laugh a lot." And I said, "Yeah." I said, "Believe me, we laugh a lot." And she goes, "That's so nice." And I could see, I think that she had just lost her buddy. And so she said, "Oh, that's so nice." And I said, "Yeah." I said, "We're very lucky." She goes, "You really are. You're very lucky." And it was just a nice moment. You know, it's nice to be grateful. It's nice to be grateful for life. It's nice to be grateful to be living this particular life. There's somewhere, you know, they talk about multi-universes, and somewhere there's a universe where there's a Marylisa who didn't close her eye and wrecked the car and maybe killed somebody that first drunk. Or there's a Marylisa who didn't get sober, and she's curled up somewhere drunk right now. I don't think I'd be lucky enough to be dead. I'd be complaining and blaming everybody else in the world. But I'm so grateful to be living this particular life. And it was not always easy, and it was not always fun. I kissed a lot of frogs before I met Marty, I can tell you that. But I never had to do it alone anymore. Alcoholics Anonymous did give me that instruction book. It gave me the instruction book. And people sat with me. I went to a big book meeting once a week, every week for 10 years, at least. Every week for 10 years. I'm not kidding. Because that's what we do. Because I really needed to get that information. And it was the beginning, the first reason I went was because it was read a paragraph and share on the paragraph you read. And I didn't know how to just pull stuff out of the air and share, but if you gave me 5 sentences, I could talk about those 5 sentences. And that got me started sharing. And that's what you do. You bring us along. Go, yeah, okay, you can't do the whole thing right now, just do this. Okay, you can't call 7 people, call your sponsor. Okay, it's all right to pray for the voicemail. You can say, "I'm calling, I don't know why." And that's what I did sometimes. I'm calling and I don't know why. But it helped me to not be alone. And so I am so, so grateful. And I think we're very close to the end. And thank you so much for letting me share. I really, really appreciate it. And I've only got the one story, so that's it. Thank you.